She found a silver key behind the toaster with a note that read, "Don't tell her." But by midnight, she would learn that her husband and sister had been planning to make her disappear for half a year. And the life insurance policy was the reason why. 13 hours earlier, the morning had begun like any other. The white porcelain plate was warm in Elena's hands as she set it down in front of Marcus. The omelet was fluffy, just the way he preferred it, with 2 slices of buttered sourdough toast arranged precisely beside it. She placed a crystal glass of freshly squeezed orange juice next to the plate, the pulp catching the cold kitchen light. Steam rose from the eggs in thin, delicate spirals. "I thought we could talk about the weekend plans," Elena said, her voice careful, hopeful. "The mountains?" Marcus didn't look up from his iPad Pro. The black tablet glowed with the sharp blue light of stock market graphs, red lines and green lines intersecting in patterns she didn't understand. He took a bite of the toast, his jaw clenching as he chewed, his eyes fixed on the screen. The fork clinked against the plate, a metallic sound that seemed to fill the entire kitchen. Elena's shoulders slumped. She reached for the empty coffee pot on the black granite countertop, moving to refill it. As she shifted a stack of discarded mail aside, her eyes caught on something small and shiny tucked behind the chrome toaster. She paused. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for it. The silver key was attached to a keychain with the initials MR engraved in capital letters. Beneath the toaster, partially hidden by a stack of bills, was a yellow sticky note. Elena pulled it out. The handwriting was neat, methodical. 42 Oak Street, Unit 4C. Followed by 4 words that made her breath catch in her throat. "Don't tell her." Marcus pushed his chair back suddenly. The metal legs scraped across the hardwood floor with a harsh, jarring sound. He grabbed his leather briefcase from beside the kitchen counter, the movement brisk and practiced. He walked past Elena without looking at her, without acknowledging the note in her trembling hand or the question in her eyes. "I'll be late," he said, his voice flat and dismissive. "Don't call me." He was gone before she could respond. Elena stood alone in the kitchen, the yellow note still in her hand, the silver key lying on the granite counter beside the omelet that had begun to cool. She ran. Her bare feet slapped against the wet pavement of the front driveway, the cool morning drizzle soaking through her silk cream-colored robe. Marcus was just unlocking his black BMW SUV, his charcoal gray suit already beaded with rain. "Marcus," Elena's voice cracked. "What is this? What is 42 Oak Street?" He turned sharply, his face flushing red as soon as he saw the yellow note in her hand. His jaw tightened. He reached out and tried to snatch it from her, but she pulled it back, pressing the paper against her chest. "Give it here," he said, his voice dropping low and dangerous. "It's work. You're being hysterical again." Elena shook her head. Marcus grabbed her wrist with his left hand, squeezing hard enough that she felt her bones compress. With his right hand, he reached into the pocket of her robe and pulled out her car keys, the metal ones jingling as he wrenched them away. Elena tried to pull her wrist back. Her feet slipped on the slick pavement, and she fell hard onto one knee. The impact was sharp, immediate. She felt warm blood bead on her skin as the cement scraped away the top layer. Marcus didn't help her up. He walked to his car, opened the door, and climbed inside. The engine roared to life. He reversed quickly, the tires splashing muddy water across Elena's robe as she sat on the ground, her knee bleeding, her breath coming in jagged gasps. The SUV's red taillights faded into the gray morning mist. Elena sat alone on the wet driveway, the yellow note still clutched in her hand, the pain in her knee barely registering against the cold shock spreading through her chest. She returned to the house and went directly to Marcus's office. The room was dark, lined with dark wood panels that seemed to absorb what little light came through the windows. She took a heavy brass paperweight from his desk and brought it down hard against the lock on the bottom drawer. The wood splintered with a crack. She had to strike it 3 times before the lock finally gave way. Inside was a single blue plastic folder. Elena opened it with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The first page was a printed spreadsheet with a title in bold letters: Daily Activity Log, Elena. Below that were columns: date, time out, time in, location, contacts. Every day of the past 3 months was documented in meticulous detail. Her visits to her sister's house, her appointment with her therapist, the coffee shop where she sometimes sat alone for an hour before going anywhere else. She flipped the page. A GPS tracking map showed a red dot centered on home. Beneath it was a list titled Frequent Stops, and her heart stopped as she read each one. The latitude and longitude coordinates were exact. "He's been watching me," Elena whispered, "for months." She found a receipt from a private investigator named Vance Steele. The amount was $5,000. The date was the same day they had celebrated their anniversary. She had worn a blue dress that night. He had given her a diamond bracelet. At the bottom of the folder was a small black GPS tracker device with a magnetic backing. It was identical to the ones used on cars. It was identical to the one she suddenly realized was probably attached to her silver sedan in the garage. Elena looked at the blinking green light on the device. It pulsed slowly, methodically, like a tiny heartbeat. She heard a floorboard creak outside the office, and she quickly gathered all the documents back into the blue folder. Elena drove her silver sedan down the tree-lined street, her hands gripping the steering wheel at exactly 10 and 2. She checked the rearview mirror. A black sedan with tinted windows was behind her, less than a car length away, maintaining perfect distance. She changed lanes. The black car changed lanes. She slowed down. The black car slowed down. Her heart began to pound against her ribs as she turned onto a quieter street that ran past a small suburban park. The black car stayed with her. She accelerated. It accelerated. The black sedan swerved left and cut directly in front of her, slamming on its brakes. Elena stomped on her brake pedal. Her car skidded sideways onto the grass shoulder with a screech of burning rubber that filled the entire street. Smoke rose from her tires. A man in a leather jacket jumped out of the black car. He ran to her side, reaching through her open window to grab her purse from the passenger seat. His movements were fast, professional, violent. Elena grabbed the strap of her purse and pulled. The man, scarred through his left eyebrow, yanked hard, dragging her halfway across the center console. She kicked out, her heel striking his chest through the window. He snarled and reached in with his other hand. His open palm struck her face with a sharp, stinging blow. Elena fell back into the driver's seat, stunned, her cheek on fire. The man jerked her purse away and sprinted back to his car. She heard the black sedan's engine roar. It sped away, leaving Elena sitting alone on the grass shoulder, her face throbbing, her hand pressed against her cheek. Elena drove directly to her sister's house. Her hands were still shaking as she parked on the street outside the small blue cottage with white shutters. She got out, rang the doorbell, and tried to calm her breathing. Lydia opened the door, took one look at Elena's bruised face and torn robe, and pulled her inside. Within minutes, Elena was sitting at the pine kitchen table, holding a bag of frozen peas to her cheek. Lydia poured tea into 2 blue ceramic mugs, with movements that were precise, clinical, controlled. "He's tracking me," Elena said, her voice shaking. "A private investigator attacked me. I found the files in Marcus's desk." Lydia set the tea down and leaned against the counter. Her arms were crossed. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look concerned. She looked pitying, as though she were looking at something fragile and broken. "We were just worried about you, Elena," Lydia said smoothly. "You've been so unstable lately." Elena dropped the bag of peas. She looked at her sister's face and then noticed Lydia's smartphone on the counter. The screen was on. It was displaying a WhatsApp thread with Marcus. He was pacing. She heard the distinctive click of his gold Rolex watch being consulted. "The transit team will be here at 5 hours," Marcus said, his voice cold and businesslike. "They have the sedation ready. Once she's at the retreat in Switzerland, she can't cause any more trouble." Elena pulled away from the door. She looked around the room, searching for any escape. The window was small and high, sealed shut with white paint. On the nightstand, a digital clock displayed the time, 4:06 p.m. She had less than an hour. She found a metal nail file on the dresser and went to the window. She began to frantically scrape at the paint, sealing the frame, her fingers bleeding from the effort. White paint chips fell onto the carpet in small, accumulating piles. Then came the knock on the door. 2 loud raps. "Elena?" Lydia's voice was on the other side. "Are you okay in there? You haven't made a sound." Elena froze, the nail file still in her hand. She climbed out the window and dropped onto the grass below. Her bare feet struck the damp lawn, and she ran toward the back of the property, aiming for the glass greenhouse. It led to the side alley that connected to the street. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts as she moved through the failing light. As she entered the greenhouse, Vance stepped out from behind a tall palm in a terracotta pot. He was holding a syringe filled with clear liquid. The needle glinted in the low light. "Easy now," he said, his voice soft and mocking. "This will make it all go away." Elena grabbed a heavy glass misting bottle from a nearby shelf and hurled it at his head. He ducked, and the bottle shattered against a glass pane. Water and glass shards flew across the space between them. Vance lunged. He grabbed Elena by her hair and swung her around, throwing her against a table of ceramic pots. Pots crashed to the floor, breaking around her, dirt spilling everywhere. Elena picked up a sharp, jagged piece of a broken pot. As Vance reached for her arm to inject her, she stabbed the clay shard into his thigh. He screamed and collapsed to one knee, blood soaking into his jeans where the shard had struck. Elena didn't stop. She kept moving toward the exit of the greenhouse. She stumbled out into the alley and reached the main road. She waved her arms frantically as a police cruiser turned the corner. "Help! Help me, please!" she screamed. The cruiser stopped. Officer Barnes stepped out, a middle-aged man in a blue uniform. He looked at Elena with a forced smile and put a hand on his holster. "Ma'am, stay calm," he said, his voice authoritative and soothing. "Mr. Reynolds called us. He said you had an episode." Elena stopped moving. Behind the officer's cruiser, Marcus's black SUV pulled up. Marcus got out, looking concerned, holding a beige cashmere coat. He approached with open arms. "Elena, darling, thank God Barnes found you," Marcus said sweetly, manipulatively. "You're not well. Let's get you home." Elena looked from the officer to her husband. Barnes moved to grab her elbow. He nodded to Marcus. That was when Elena understood. The police were part of it. They were all part of it. "No," she whispered. "You're all with him. You're all with him." Vance limped out from the alley, clutching his bleeding leg. He pointed at Elena. A white van with no windows and no markings pulled up beside them. The doors slid open. Elena was shoved into the back of the white van. 2 men in blue scrubs were waiting inside. One tried to pin her arms down. The interior was lined with gray acoustic foam. The space was impossibly small and dark. Elena bit the hand of the first attendant. He yelled and pulled away. She grabbed a heavy green oxygen tank from a wall bracket and swung it in a wide arc. It struck the second attendant in the temple. He slumped against the side of the van, unconscious. The first attendant recovered and tackled her, pinning her to the floorboards. He reached for a preloaded syringe on a small shelf. Elena's hand fumbled desperately on the floor, searching, grasping, finding a discarded silver ballpoint pen. She jammed it into the attendant's shoulder. He groaned, and his grip loosened. Elena pushed him off, but the van suddenly swerved, throwing them both against the wall. "Let me out," Elena gasped. The van doors flew open. They were inside a large, cavernous hangar. A small private jet was idling nearby, its engines whining. Marcus stood at the bottom of the plane's stairs. Elena saw a flare gun in the emergency kit, mounted on the van's interior wall. She grabbed it. Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised. When he saw the flare gun, his face went pale. His entire body began to tremble. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Fire. He had been terrified of fire since childhood. "Elena, put that down," he said, his voice shaking. "It's dangerous. Think about what you're doing." Elena aimed the flare gun not at Marcus, but at a stack of dry wooden pallets and oily rags near the hangar door. She pulled the trigger. A bright red orb of fire streaked across the hangar and ignited the rags instantly. The fire flared up violently. Marcus screamed and covered his eyes, retreating into the shadow of the plane. All the guards rushed toward the fire with extinguishers. Elena ran for the small side door of the hangar and burst out into the cool evening air. A motorcycle was parked nearby with the keys in the ignition. She climbed on, kicked the kickstand, and roared away. The hangar receded behind her, smoke rising into the sky. Elena reached the broadcasting studio at 7 p.m. She was still wearing her torn silk robe, but now covered with a stolen leather jacket. She slammed the blue folder and the GPS tracker onto the desk of a high-end news producer. "This isn't just about me," Elena said, her voice sharp and clear. "Look at the bank accounts tied to the tracking services. He's laundering it through Marcus Reynolds' investment firm." The producer flipped through the pages. Her eyes widened as she saw the list of names. Sarah Vickers, Julia Thorne, Lydia Miller. There were others, many others. All of them had been tracked. All of them had been sent to the same retreat. "This is the biggest scandal of the year," the producer said, her voice urgent and excited. "Get a camera in here, now." A stylist brushed Elena's hair and covered the bruise on her cheek with concealer. Elena looked at herself in the makeup mirror. She didn't look like a victim. She looked steady. The producer handed her a microphone. The red on-air light flickered on. Elena looked directly into the lens of the camera. "My husband tried to make me invisible," Elena said, her voice strong and resonant. "He tried to tell me I was crazy, but I have the records." She pulled out Marcus's secret silver key from that morning and placed it on the desk in front of her. She watched the screen as the broadcast went live across the nation. The news cycle exploded. By midnight, Marcus and Lydia were being led into a police station in handcuffs, their heads bowed to hide from the flashes of cameras. Federal investigators were executing search warrants on Marcus's investment firm. The story was spreading across every network. Elena sat on a plush white chair in a secure hotel room, drinking a glass of water. Her phone, a new one her sister didn't know about, buzzed on the glass-top table. She opened the email. It was an automated notification from a life insurance company. Policy canceled. She read the fine print. The policy was for $10 million. Marcus and Lydia were listed as 50-50 beneficiaries. She scrolled down. Attached was a signed document by Lydia, witnessing Elena's mental incapacity to keep the policy active. The date on the signature was 6 months earlier, January 12th. They had been planning this for half a year. Elena watched the breaking news update on the TV in the corner. Marcus and Lydia were being led away from the police station. He looked small and broken. She looked angry and afraid. Elena walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. The first light of dawn was beginning to break over the buildings in the distance. She took the yellow sticky note from her pocket, crumpled and stained from the day, and ripped it into tiny pieces. The fragments fell into the trash can below. She breathed in deeply.